One of my most vivid memories actually was not that of violence, but it was a memory of silence. Um, a curfew had been imposed in the area in which I lived, and military tanks were patrolling the streets at night. And there was lots of shards of glass on the street because taxis had been smashed. The windshields of taxis had been smashed during the day, and these military tanks were going over the street and crunching bits of glass. And it was a very surreal kind of feeling because it was an otherwise very lively street that I lived in, and it was the first time that I actually wondered how a city like Bombay could become almost savage in such a short time. So when this novel started with an image of a boy who was very, very thin, so thin in fact that he was trying to push his ribs back into his body. And he had this image of his ribs transforming into tusks and becoming weapons of justice. And it was with this image that I started the novel, and I chose the riots as a setting. Kahunsha refers to a dream city. Chamdi's dream is that one day all sadness will die and Bombay will be reborn as Kahunsha, the city of no sadness. The section that I'm going to read from takes place in the middle of the book, where Chamdi meets a street kid called Sumdi, a boy with polio, who has a very big scar on his face, and they are about to go begging. So Chamdi is going to learn a lesson on the art of begging from Sumdi. And there's one more character that you should know about, a gangster named Anandbhai, who controls all these street children. Chamdi follows Sumdi down the road. He spots a cow lazing on the footpath. A man walks past the cow carrying an air conditioner in his hand. The cow is in the man's way and he tries to shoo it away, but it does not budge. "Where are we going?" asks Chamdi. "To beg." "To beg? Maharaj, don't be so surprised. You are a man of the streets, no? So why is begging bad? It's the family business." "But what do we do?" asks Chamdi. "First you tell me the truth." "About what?" "About where you are from. Otherwise I will beat you on the head with my polio leg." Chamdi knows that there is no point in carrying on with his act. He needs Sumdi's help in a city like this. "Do I have to beg you to tell me?" asks Sumdi. "We must not beg from each other. The enemy is out there, sitting in taxis." "I'm from an orphanage," says Chamdi. "What's that?" "You don't know what an orphanage is?" "Ah, yaar, I don't know." "An orphanage is where they keep children without parents." "Oh, there's another name for such a place." "What?" "Bombay," says Sumdi. "You're smiling, but it's true. This city is our home, and it looks after us very badly." "How did you know," asked Chamdi, "that I'm from an orphanage?" "So many clues. Just look at your teeth. All clean in one line, so well mannered. That means you brush them." "Yes." "See my teeth." Sumdi opens his mouth wide, and Chamdi can see that his teeth are chipped and jagged, and they seem to grow on top of one another, as if they are fighting for space. "Not a single day I have brushed my teeth," he says. "But don't be fooled. They might be yellow and eaten up, but I could snap your forearm into two if I wanted. Not that I would bite your forearm, but I would crack it if you challenged me." No, I believe you. "But more than your teeth, your style gave you away." "My style of what?" "You act like a prince. You think and then you speak. When I speak, the words just come out like vomit." As they walk and talk, a juicewala's cart catches Chamdi's eye. A plastic mixer containing orange juice rests on a glass case in which the oranges and mosambis are stored. "Now hope for a solid traffic jam," Sumdi tells Chamdi. "Why a jam?" "So that cars are stuck and we have more time at the traffic lights." "But it's still morning." So no traffic jam. In the orphanage we could hear the sound of cars only in the afternoon." "Hey, what sort of place was this orphanage? What rubbish did they teach you there?" asked Sumdi. "I learned how to read and write." "You can read and write?" "Yes." "And are you proud of that?" Very proud. That's of no use at all, you fool. When you go to the taxis to beg, they are not going to ask you, excuse me, can you spell your name please? What do I do? You must act like you are really suffering. But we are suffering. Hero, this is Bombay. No one cares about the truth. The people want emotion, tears. Can you cry real tears? On demand? Yaar, I'm just playing with you, he says. Now listen, there should be no shame in begging. We are smart boys. If life had been good to us, we would not be begging. No one will give us work, so we have to do this. No shame in begging. Chamdi notices that Sumdi's tone has suddenly changed. His voice is softer, firmer. The tears will come anyway, trust me. I think of my father and that car going over him, and my mother screaming and running towards him, and I had to hold my sister because I was more afraid than she was. Then he spits onto his palm, greases his hair with it, even though he hardly has any hair. In the sunlight, the scar on his face seems even darker, as though the skin has been removed inch by inch. Even with this face, I can still look handsome, he says. You know how many movie offers I get when I go begging? But I always refuse. Who wants fame? Look around you. I can pull my pants down and let it go like a waterfall anytime I want. How many movie stars can do that? Chamdi still stares at the scar. He knows it must make Sumdi uneasy. The edges of the ear are jagged like torn paper. I must look handsome for the aunties, he says. There are some very rich aunties in taxis. With that, Sumdi steps off the sidewalk and onto the main road. Chamdi watches his new friend trail a black and yellow taxi as it slows down for the red light. Bhaiya, please give something, says Sumdi to the taxiwala. Don't eat my brains early in the morning, says the taxiwala. But if I have no food, naturally I'll eat your brains, no? Your tongue is sharp. Be careful or you'll cut yourself. That's the problem. My tongue is so sharp, food is afraid to enter my mouth. Look how skinny I am. You don't look skinny to me. Look at what polio did to my leg. What other sickness do you have? Asked the taxiwala. Oh, I'm in love. Biggest illness. The taxiwala reaches into the pocket of his shirt and takes out a 1 rupee coin. 1 rupee? For 1 rupee, what will I get? You can get lost, says the driver. Don't want to see your face again. Is next week okay? The taxiwala smiles. As the light turns green, Sumdi steps on the sidewalk again. That was very good, says Chamdi. Stop congratulating me and go make some money. But I wanted to watch you first. You wanted to watch me who cannot read or write? I want to learn properly how to beg, says Chamdi. Then you are my student from this moment. Done. Show me some respect, you idiot. Call me sir. Sir. Now pay attention. First rule, never beg from taxiwalas. But you just did. Sumdi taps Chamdi on the head with his knuckles. Don't argue with the master. You rarely get money from taxiwalas. But this one's a regular. I've known him for 2 years now. Every day he takes the same route. When he's in a good mood, he gives. With the taxiwalas, you cannot use emotion because their lives are just as hellish as ours. And don't be stupid and tell them that you can read and write because maybe they can't. You don't want to make them feel you are cleverer than them. You are a beggar and beggars are meant to be brainless. Okay, I will be brainless. Sometimes it helps to act mentally disturbed, especially with delicate ladies. Cross your eyes and make strange sounds. Bang your head against the taxi a few times. Go close to the window and cough right into their faces. Guaranteed money maker. Right. Next are the lovebirds. You know what lovebirds are? I think so. Explain to me. Lovebirds are the boy girl. What are you shy of? Lovebirds are beautiful. That's what you must tell them. Look at you two. Forever you will be together like two beautiful birds. May you have many, many children, adds Chamdi. No, never mention children, says Sumdi. The boy will slap you. He doesn't want his girl to become bloated like a football. No children. Just say that they are meant for each other and if you are lucky they will give you a coin. The best time to beg is when they are kissing. Keep on begging, keep on irritating, please give money, please give money, please give money. Keep on saying it until the boy gets fed up and give you a 5 rupee note. 5 rupees? Yes, love costs. Now the biggest item, the foreigner. Man from other land. With these people you have to use pity. Make sure your face is very dirty. Put spit all over your face and underneath your eyes so it looks like you've been crying. Then go near the window and look directly into their eyes. It will be hard because they're always wearing sunglasses, but do it anyway. If they do not give money immediately, then say something like, my father beats me, my mother is dying, my car is not working. My car is not working? Say anything, it doesn't matter. They have no idea what you're saying. Most of them. But some of them are sharp and speak the language. Now there are many more types. But lessons for today are over. You may leave and go home. I'm already home, says Chamdi. The streets are my home for now. Wah, what a line. You're ready. Now go. Go earn some money. Thank you.
My turn, I guess.
Yes.
Okay. Can I move this here? Yeah. Because, there's people sitting here and I don't want to be backing them. I thought I'd read a little from Cracking India. And I'll read a little from my other book, Water, because both these were made into films. Cracking India was made into the film Earth by Deepa Mehta, who wanted to make the trilogy Fire, Earth and Water. But before I proceed, I do want to say thank you for inviting me here, and Joe for taking all this trouble. And I do want to thank the Georgia Center for the books, for having this wonderful organization. Very few cities, I think, take advantage of this, as Atlanta does. And I lived in Atlanta for a year, in '84, in Marietta, Cobb County, and I thoroughly fell in love with it, Atlanta. Unfortunately, we had to move, but I'm so glad to be back again. And I get back to my book. Cracking India is the book about the partition of India into India and Pakistan. This was in 1974, and I was a child then. This was in 1936. And, no.
47, I think.
1947. Why am I getting so confused? Yeah. And I was a child at that time. And I remember there was a constant roar of the mobs. And they were all chanting religious slogans. The Muslims were chanting, Bolo Se, what were they? Allahu Akbar, Ya Ali. And the Sikhs were chanting, Bole So Nihal, Sat Sri Akal, and Hare Hare Mahadev. The Hindus were chanting. I couldn't make out the words, but I could tell that these were mobs who were up to no good. And this was a terror in my life. I felt they were up to no good, and my family and my friends were under threat. I wrote 2 other books first, The Pakistani Bride and The Crow Eaters, and then I felt that very little had been written about the partition of India. This was a defining moment in our history which changed the map of the world. And I grew up with memories of fires, I saw some dead bodies which are very vivid still in my mind, and I've put a lot of that into my book. But one of the things I grew up with, which I didn't realize then, was the hush-hush talk about women. And very few people know this, but at the time of partition, when one of the biggest migrations in history took place 12 million people changed borders in 3 months. Villagers were, forced to change, to move from their soil. And villagers are embedded in the soil. It was very painful for them to move. But mobs of 30,000 people waving swords were coming around from village to village, telling the Muslims, go to Pakistan, and telling the Hindus, go to India. So this migration took place. But the worst that befell was what happened to the women. Hundreds of thousands of women were kidnapped at this time, Hindu and Sikh women by the Muslims, Muslim women by the Hindus and Sikhs. And they were, it was a free-for-all. It was not just a carnal thing when the women were raped and badly treated. It was more like, in attacking your woman, we are attacking the man who owns you. After all, a woman is a chattel. She's owned by the men. She is a symbol of your honor. In attacking a woman, we are attacking your honor, your faith, your religion, your tribe. We're attacking everything about you. And a lot of these women were killed. A lot of them, were taken into homes and became wives and produced children. And then there was a double whammy on them because after partition, huge hordes of social service volunteer workers went from village to village collecting these women. Most villages knew, there's a woman in that household who should not be there. So they were able to find a lot of these women. And when the Hindus came to retrieve the Hindu women from the houses of Muslims who had kidnapped them, they discovered that the women had already had children or maybe married those men. And they said, no, you are Hindu, you are Indian, you come with us, but your children, we cannot take them because they are Muslim, and anybody who's been touched by a Muslim is not going to be accepted. And it was a double whammy. They had to leave their children again and be repatriated. And the same happened to the Muslim women, And the sad thing was that the women who were repatriated and sent back to their families were not accepted back because they would say, oh, you've been touched by a Muslim, we don't want you. Or you've been sexually molested by a Hindu or a Sikh, we don't want you, you're a disgrace to our family. And they became prostitutes and they became household servants. So in telling the story, I wanted to tell the story also of the lives of what happened to these women. And there's a central character here. This book is narrated by a small child. She's from the age of 4 till adolescence. She's got a very complex structure. She shifts around in her age. And at the same time, you always know that there's a sophisticated adult presence behind this child, because otherwise a child's voice is very tedious. But I'll read you a little bit from here. When Deepa Mehta called me early one morning to say, I've just read Cracking India and I want to make it into a film. Can I? And she talked non-stop, And while she was talking, I realized that she understood the book very well. She understood the importance of this child narrator whose faith was a Zoroastrian, a Parsi. And this was very important, that she was not Hindu, Muslim, or Sikh, because she could bring as a Zoroastrian Parsi. I don't know if any of you have even heard of a Zoroastrian, but that's what I am. And this child could bring some dispassion to the account. And Deepa also was from the Punjab, from where I was, except she was from the Indian side of the Punjab. I was from the Pakistani side of the Punjab. And I felt she understood each nuance of the book. And so when she paused to take a breath, I said, yeah, you can make the film. And then she worked on the script, and I was teaching at Mount Holyoke at that stage. And one day she said, look, your agent is taking too long to come to a decision. I'm bringing the script, and I'm coming. We were, of course, talking about the script nonstop. And she came, and that day I was to present a reading at Mount Holyoke. And it's the first time I saw her half an hour before this reading. And I said, will you join me? It'll be fun. And she said, sure. And I started off with a little bit of a challenge. I read this out to her, and I said, I'll tell you. So So this is this young girl who has a very happy, comfortable life, and she has a nanny whom she loves, called Aya. Aya is an Indian word for nanny. And the nanny is a very beautiful woman who is surrounded by Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, and they're all in love with her. So she's a sort of magnet around which all the communities are gelling. And then when the communities break up, and what happens to her, it unravels what partition did. Anyway, this is a chilling book in a way, but I cannot write without humor, so I use humor a lot. I have many teachers. Now this is this child narrating. My cousin shows me things. You want to see my marbles, he asks, and holds out prettily colored glass balls for me to admire and touch. He has just returned from Quetta, where he had a hernia operation. Let me show you my scar, he offers, unbuttoning his fly and exposing me to the glamorous spectacle of a stitched scar and a handful of genitals. He too has clever fingers. You can touch it, he offers. His expression is disarming, gallant. I touch the fine scar and gingerly hold the genitals he transfers to my palm. We both study them. I am also having my tonsils removed, he says. I raise my head and look at his neck. I visualize a red scalloped scar running from ear to ear. It is a premonition. So, this is how the premonition comes about of the carnage that is going to take place. So I asked Deepa, she had written this scene in, and I said, how on earth are you going to film this? She said, oh, that was easy. I went to a sex shop in Canada. She's Canadian. And I asked them, do you have male genitals? I'm a filmmaker. And the man said, yes, of course, madam. What size would you like? And she says that I told him that I want something that might belong to a 9-year-old boy. And then the shopkeeper was very hurt. He said, madam, are you a filmmaker or are you a pervert? So this was all going on in front of the girls of Mount Holyoke, which is not known for its levity, And anyway, after this, one of the professors came up to me and said, both of you ladies looking so sophisticated in your saris, I can't believe you were talking so much rubbish. So this is how, I just wanted to say how Deepa did understand the nuances of this novel, and she was able to bring it out beautifully in the book. Now this child, who did not even know the names of people, she knew the man who sold her popsicles as the Ice Candy Man. This book was called Ice Candy Man in Britain and India and elsewhere. And the person who massaged her legs was the masseur, and she didn't know their names. But suddenly one day she realizes that they have names, and not only do they have names, but they also have religions. And this is where her awareness comes in. There is much disturbing talk. India is going to be broken. Can one break a country? And what happens if they break it where our house is? Or crack it further up on Worse Road? How will I get to Godmother's then? I ask cousin. Rubbish, she says. No one's going to break India. It's not made of glass. I ask Aya. They'll dig a canal, she ventures. This side for Hindustan and this side for Pakistan. If they want two countries, that's what they'll have to do. Crack India with a long, long canal. Gandhi, Jinnah, Mountbatten, our names are here. And I become aware of religious differences. It is sudden. One day everybody is themselves, and the next day they are Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Christian. People shrink, dwindling into symbols. Aya is no longer just my all-encompassing Aya. She's also a token, a Hindu. Carried away by a renewed devotional fervor, she expends a small fortune in joss sticks, flowers, and sweets on the gods and goddesses in the temples. Imamdin and Yusuf, they are Muslims, turning into religious zealots, warn mother they will take Friday afternoons off for the Jummah prayers. Moti the sweeper and his untouchable daughter Pappu become ever more untouchable as they're entrenched deeper into their low Hindu caste. The Rogers of Birdwood Barracks and King George are English Christians. They look down their noses upon the Anglo-Indians, who look down theirs on all non-Christians. Godmother and my nuclear family are reduced to irrelevance. We are Parsi. What is God? So there is this. Nobody knew what really, the poor people didn't know what partition was. They were very bewildered. They said, what is Pakistan? Where is Pakistan to be? Oh, what's happening? So they were just wondering what's happening to them. Yes, they'd heard of Gandhi, they'd heard of Jinnah, but these were all sort of political movements, and they suffered on account of it. And of course, in all this, the British played a very sinister role. They were the colonizers, and when the partition time came, they were very careless about it. They knew now they were leaving the country, so they wanted to be done with it very fast. They just set about taking whatever they could, and Lord Mountbatten was supposed to divide the country, keeping demographics of where the Hindus were and the Muslims were in mind. But they drew an almost straight line here and there, with the result that all this carnage took place. They could have, of course, stopped the carnage. They had enough army, enough weapons to do that, but they didn't want to, because this was what they all the time said. The minute we leave, these stupid natives, they'll fall on each other's throats. And this is what they wanted to show the world. And of course, they did rule the country by that policy of divide and rule. When you divide a country, because this happened after the 1857 mutiny, when the Muslims, Hindus, they all joined together to try and throw the British out. And they did kill a lot of British people, their wives and children and women, and they got very scared, and that's when they started the deliberate policy of making the Hindus and Muslims hate each other. Playing British guards under the ceiling fans of the Philates Hotel, the Radcliffe Commission deals out Indian cities like a pack of cards. Lahore is dealt to Pakistan, Amritsar to India, Sialkot to Pakistan, Pathankot to India. I am Pakistani in a snap, just like that. A new nation is born. India has been divided after all. Did they dig the long, long canal Aya mentioned? This was in a novel it's very difficult to read out little bits. And this is one of the scenes which was described to me by a gentleman who was 16 at the time of partition, and he went through some of the turmoil in the sense that he went to the station waiting for his family to come in a train. And I used a lot of these stories in the narrative, and this is a pivotal part of the narrative. We stir and stretch. This is always the girl child recording. We stir and stretch, preparing to break up for the evening, and just then, in the muted rustle, we hear the rattle of a bicycle hurtling up our drive at an alarming speed. We grow still, expectant, and emerging from the night like a blundering bird, scraping his shoe on the veranda steps to check the heedless velocity of his approach, Ice Candy Man comes to an abrupt and jolted halt. He is breathless, reeking of sweat, and his frantic eyes rake the group. They rest for an instant on the Sikh. A train from Gurdaspur has just come in, he announces, panting. Everyone in it is dead, butchered. There are no young women among the dead, only 2 gunny bags full of women's breasts. And this was fact. Ice Candy Man's grip on the handlebars is so tight that his knuckles bulge whitely in the pale light. I was expecting relatives. For 3 days, for 12 hours each day, I waited for that train. What I've heard is unbearable. I don't want to believe it. For a grisly instant, I see mothers' detached breasts, soft pendulous, their beige nipples spreading. I shake my head to focus my distracted attention on Ice Candy Man. He appears to have grown shades darker, and his face is all dried up. I can see that beneath his shock, he is grieving. I instinctively look at the Sikh zoo attendant. Now, the Sikhs had attacked this train in Gurdaspur, and so when Ice Candy Man narrates this, the child looks at the Sikh, because this is going to unleash a huge vendetta of violence. And from this, it just ping-pongs, the violence and vendetta escalate day by day.
Also, Anosh says Anosh is going to have to leave.
Oh.
Take some questions.
Yes, I think I can stop there. Okay.
Yeah, we can come back to Waterhole, but we just take some questions right now.
Sure.
For Anosh, we're not back to India.
Right.
Bapsi, she has a question.
So, yes?
I wanted to say that I have seen fire and earth and water and read about the challenges that Sidhwa had in filming these. And when I read on the library site that you were coming, I was moved to come, and I wanted to tell you that it's an honor to meet you, and thank you for writing such beautiful and heartfelt and revealing stories about women's lives.
Thank you so much for coming and for your comments. Thank you.
Anosh, since you write novels and plays, what for you is, what draws you to each? Is there one particular form you're drawn toward more than the other? Or which do you find easier, novels or plays?
I think it's harder to write a play for me. The first draft of a play only takes about a month maybe to write. But I find the restrictions that the stage imposes provides more of a challenge. You have to really think about structure. Of course, even in a novel you have to think about structure. But I always find that an audience in a play is very unforgiving. They don't have time. With a novel you can keep the novel and come back to it. You'll have a reader who says, okay, let me give it another try. With a play you don't have that luxury. If you don't have them in the first 15 minutes, you've lost your audience. And the reward for me is seeing how a live audience reacts to the work. You get a response there and then. And the play is never the same every single night. The novel is always the same. It doesn't change its form. But the play changes every single night when it's performed. Of course, and I also like working with people. The novel is a very solitary thing. And I enjoy that as well. I think I need both. Yukio Mishima is a Japanese writer. He used to say that he used to write novels and plays, and they asked him this question that, what do you prefer writing? He said, the novel is my wife and the play is my mistress. I can't do without either.
Could I ask you a question also,
Yeah,
Anosh?
sure. Yeah.
You write so feelingly about street children of Bombay. You must have had a lot of experience with them in your book.
Yeah.
Can you tell us something
Sure.
about it?
It's impossible to grow up in Bombay without knowing these street children. They're everywhere. Everywhere you look, there are street children. But also, a friend of mine runs a program called Dancing Feet, where he teaches children who are HIV positive or street kids or juvenile delinquents. He teaches them dance. And I used to help him out during these shows, and that's when I got to really talk and know these street children. And for example, one story that he told us about this 8-year-old boy, they were talking about death and, about HIV and how it eventually leads to death. And this boy said, I know what death is. I've seen my mother burn herself right before my eyes. So I know what death is now. Can we move on? I want to dance.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So that's the kind of reality that we're dealing with. So that one story, in a way, made me understand what I had to keep in mind, the level of knowledge that these kids had, the amount of things that they had seen on the streets. That one story I always had at the back of my mind whenever I was writing this book, asking myself that is it possible that a child can know this? And the answer was always yes. The child knows this and much more because Bombay is a very tough city.
It's a beautiful book.
Thank you.
I'd like to comment on the way both of you challenge this stereotypical portrayal of characters in the novels, especially with regard to disability. And I found Bapsi Sidhwa's portrayal of Lenny so refreshing, because I also have polio and I just never saw any character, especially writing, novels or anything of the sort. So it just kind of, grabbed me, and I just wanted to see how she made this character come alive and just take stock of herself as being this beautiful, unassuming way, because she's still a child, but she owns her sexuality in a way that's beautiful to me. And at the same time, what I saw in your portrayal was this character who is so clever and is never, and that's the reality, and that's the way children are. They don't see themselves as, in these categories that people create. So
They're very clear-sighted, they see through to the hearts of things.
I just want to say that that's a wonderful portrayal of these characters.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, I would be reading the book, but before that, I would like to ask you the harshness of life that befalls these street children. On the one hand, matures them so fast. On the other hand, I really would like to know where you found the balance between negating life or embracing life.
Yes, that's a good question.
The spontaneity of children on the one hand, and the harshness where constantly they have to rise to a mature level to deal with adults as they do to survive.
Right. I think in this book, the balance was in the fact that this boy had a dream that one day all sadness would die and Bombay would be reborn as Kahunsha, the city of no sadness. And the challenge for him was a fight between hope and hopelessness, the hope of his dream and the hopelessness that he saw on the streets. And the more he understood reality, the more he tried to cling on to that spark of hope. And that was where the struggle was for me in the novel, to not let that hope completely die. And towards the end of the novel, there is still some hope left. This boy truly becomes a man, even though he's only 10 years old. But he doesn't completely lose his soul. And that is enough of a victory considering the things that he has to do in the story. So for me, the balance was just retaining even a small spark of hope.
Yeah. Beautifully done.
I have a very quick question. I was just curious to know, why did you choose to be an author, and who did you think your audience or readers would be? You could have been a journalist maybe and, talked about these street children and features and things like that. What led you to writing a novel about that, I mean?
Well, I can't be a journalist because I hate research. So I don't think that's something I would be. Yeah. Well, my research in a way is just Bombay. When you grow up in a city like Bombay, it really teaches you a lot. But I always loved telling stories. That's something I've done since I was a child. I'm not one of those writers who knew right from the beginning that I'm going to be a writer. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was lost for the longest time and I used to just drink and gamble. But, that helped me. I think what also helped me, unfortunately, I should not say this, but was the fact that I did not read much when I was young. I didn't read anything. I used to it was a very oral storytelling tradition that my family had, that India has. It's a very strong oral storytelling storytelling tradition. And what I found when I went to university over here was that a lot of people were so restricted by everything that they had read that they were terrified of writing. I, on the other hand, had no fear because I hadn't read anything. So, you know. Yeah,
I actually have the same question for Bapsi too. I mean, when you were writing, who did you think your audience would be? Did you think your books are going to be read, by foreign lands, by academia, and things like that? And did you?
No, I was just. My experience was so different from yours in a way. As a child, I did have polio, and consequently, I wasn't sent to school. Because the doctor said, she's not going to become a doctor or a professor. Why do you want to spoil her nerves further? Because it's bad for the nerves, her studying. So I just had a little bit of private tuition at home. I never learnt maths. I never read Shakespeare. But what I did do, at the age of 9, my teacher gave me, age of 11 actually, the book called Little Women. And oh my God, I read that book and I said, oh my God, I felt these are my friends, this is a new world. I was a very lonely child, and it gave me entry into a world of people. And that became my world, reading. Because as a child, I read non-stop. I didn't go to school, I didn't have friends. I belonged to a small Parsi community in Lahore, among a whole sea of Muslim friends, And the slack of my life was taken up by reading. Of course, I read nothing but what was given to me as presents, which were classics in a way, all the British classics and the Russian and the French, and of course the Enid Blytons and the children's books and things like that. And then I got married at the age of 19. I did go to college for 4 years, but Kinnaird College in Lahore is not a very great learning experience. I had a great time running around the hockey field. By this time I was strong. And I could hardly attend classes because you need discipline to sit in classes. And I didn't have that as a child, so I couldn't attend classes. And then I got married and went on a honeymoon where I heard a very touching story of a little girl married into the tribes which live between the Afghan and Pakistan borders, where Osama bin Laden is supposed to be hidden. Now that whole area is so ridden with caves and mountains, and it's a very remote area. And a little girl was brought there to be married into one of the tribes, and we went there on my honeymoon, my husband and I, and we heard the story that this little girl was seen there at the army camp, and she was taken across the Indus River, which is unadministered territory, to be married, and they heard a month later she had run away. Now, these tribes live by a code of honor. There's no jurisprudence as we know it. There's no courts, no. And the whole point in telling me the story was that this child survived 16-year-old, for 2 weeks in those barren, there's not a blade of grass there. These are the Hindu Kush and the Karakoram, the highest mountains in the world. And she ran there for about 2 weeks. But the code of honor of these tribes was such that she was married to a man. Obviously, he had to buy her to marry her, so he had paid for her. So it was like a Cadillac stealing itself. Something he'd paid for had run away. So the little tribe, and these were little hamlets of 30, 40 people, in valleys tucked away among these tall mountains. They were out hunting her, and when she came to the river Indus, they decapitated her and killed her and threw her body, because that was the only punishment they knew for a crime of this nature. And this was a very beautiful part of the world. The mountains are gorgeous. The Indus River, there is like a seething turquoise snake. It was, in a way, a mystic experience for me. I've never felt like that again. And when I came back to Lahore, I felt I must tell this girl's story, because it reflected the stories of so many young women who have no control over their lives in our part of the world. Their brothers, fathers, everybody controlled their lives, But when I started to write, thinking I'll write a short story, I found I was thinking to myself, but how did this girl meet this old tribal? How did she grow up? Who were her parents? And it just came about automatically that it turned into a novel. And when after I wrote it, I enjoyed writing very much. It was a compulsion. I did it in secret because, in our milieu, if I said I was writing, they'd make fun of me. They'd, what will Bapsi write? She'll write a romance or something. And so, I couldn't tell anybody I was writing. But after I finished it, I never thought of that somebody would read it or it would be published. The only person who knew I was writing was my husband, And I'd read out bits to him and he'd fall asleep if he was bored, and if he laughed, I felt happy, So. And I felt that at the end of it, that I just so automatically erupted into writing novels because I had read so much. It was just so strangely different from yours. I felt without trying to or realizing it, I'd learned so much about sentence structure, about structure of a novel, about building up tension. It came automatically when I wrote. So to write for me was a compulsion to fill in the silences of my life in a way, because I had no one to talk to, nothing, and I had to express myself, and writing was the mode I used to do that.
Actually, unfortunately, Anosh's driver is here to pass to the airport. He will, however, is going to sign some copies and be out there. You all can pick up on your way out this evening. So thank you so much, Anosh, for coming.
Just want to thank you all. Thank everyone for inviting me, and I had a good time, and I hope I can visit again. And I hope you get a chance to read the book. Thank you. And I also want to thank Bapsi.
Stay longer.
Well, I'll miss my flight, and then my publisher is going to have to pay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck. Good luck.
Okay, while I'm taking care of him and getting him off, if you would like to read a little bit from water or take a couple more questions, please.
Should I do that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll miss Anosh. Now, this is a very strange coincidence. I belong to a little Zoroastrian community, and we are 120,000 in the whole world. We were at one time the world's dominant religion. The Persian Empire, Cyrus the Great, Darius, they were all Zoroastrian kings, and now we are the dodo birds of world religion. And the strange thing is that Anosh and I both belong to that same community. We met for the first time, and we happen to be reading together, and I'm delighted at that. Well, here is, how many of you have seen water? Wow, how many of you have seen earth? Not bad, thank you. Well, as you know, water is about the lives of Hindu widows. It is set around the late 1930s. And it is a story of a little child who is married to a much older man. And now in normal circumstances, when a child is married to an older man, the child does not leave to go to the husband's house till after puberty. But when a child's husband is dying, at that point, she has to accompany his body to the place where his funeral pyre will take place, otherwise his soul will rot in hell. Anything the woman does affects his soul. She has to be pious, she has to pray, she has to fast, she has not to eat salt, she has not to eat anything fried or sweetmeats. And let me read you some parts of it. And this is not in the movie, but I've tried to describe how the husband and wife relate to each other, her parents, and how they're talking about her marriage, how she gets married, what a sweet, innocent little life she had till she's taken to the ashram. Chuya is only 6. Her father has agreed to marry her to Hira Lal, who is about 50. Chuya's mother is furious when her husband brings her the news. Shouldn't you have consulted me, said Bhagya. Somnath swallowed the beetle juice that had collected in his mouth. How could I refuse Hira Lal's mother? Hira Lal's mother used to supply her with a lot of work as a Brahmin priest. Bhagya drew her sari forward so that her face was in shadow. It is settled then. Why bother to tell me? So what if I never set eyes on the man? She had not spoken to him so harshly in a long time. The family is of Brahmin lineage. We should be honored, said Somnath, and in an attempt to placate her, he added, our little mouse will remain with us until she comes of age. She will have a normal childhood. Ish Bhagwan, may she never come of age. Bhagya spat out the words. Don't speak such ill-omened words. A girl is destined to leave her parents. She is safe only in her husband's care. She is safe enough in our care. In the Brahmin tradition, a woman is recognized as a person only when she is one with her husband. And as if recalling a passage from a holy book, Somnath added, a woman's body is a site for conflict between her lustful aspect and her stiri dharma, which is her womanly duty. Bhagya stared at him. And you think that man will be able to satisfy her lustful aspect? By the time her womanhood blooms, he'll be spent. Somnath was shocked. Although he knew his wife's passionate nature, her lust was contained within the parameters sanctioned by marriage. But to hear her speak so crudely about his daughter's sexuality violated his sensibility. The Brahmin elders were right. Women were dangerous. They sapped a man's strength and stood between him and salvation. He stared at the woman confronting him. The hard glint in her husband's eyes pierced Bhagya. It chilled her blood. You are the wife and daughter of Brahmin priests. You are aware of our traditions, he said. Outside of marriage, the wife has no recognized existence. A woman's role in life is to get married and have sons. That is why she is created, to have sons. Bhagya, overwhelmed by her husband's fury, knew she had overstepped her bounds. She dropped her eyes. His words bore the wisdom of gods and ancient sages, and who was she to challenge that august pantheon? A girl carried within her the seeds of dishonor, and the burden of responsibility was to be borne by her parents until she was married. So, this is the action that takes place, how she gets married, till even before the film starts, where she's moving to go to accompanying her dying husband.